Hello everyone, Kurt Olfa here, and welcome back to another episode from Hofreiter Labs. Today we continue on with Fiore's Armored Sword section, and we're going to be actually talking about the plays this time, as well as some of the considerations that we may not be looking at when we talk about how this kind of fight unfolds. To begin with this right here, we're going to be talking about why we see in the very beginning a person that is holding the sword in two hands, as well as, the plays that are coming out of an armored sword grip and some of the considerations that unfolds that we may or may not be considering in this space. But before we get into that though, please, as always, like, subscribe, share with a friend out there, and if you're new to the channel, leave a comment below and let me know what your thoughts are about what you're seeing here. Very curious about all that you have to, that people have to say and see. And we want to grow this channel, and that's not possible without viewers like you. So please join us. And with that being the case here, let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the plays of the Armored Sword section within Fiore's manuscript. But before we get into that, we need to address a conversational point of why attack somebody in armor with an extended position. Now, the big thing about this right here, there's plenty of videos out there that talk about it. It makes no sense to do this. You want to have the armored grip as far as this goes. It is my opinion that because of things like the point test, which I had done earlier before, when you jab this at somebody and with malintent, it is not a comfortable thing. And I don't think for a second that the strikes that we're trying to do here are meant to break, chain, or cause, to go through the person. So it's a different kind of pry accessory that goes to this. And, when we talk about extending the sword like this, if we see within the first image, what we can see is this right here is that, again, the person's crossing. So we know the master's utilizing Veracrochet to come up across to defend against this, but why attack this way? Well, is this person out of his mind? Do they not understand what's going on with it? Or are they some two-bit pantaloon? I don't think so at all, because Fiore's plays would not have purpose if they were not malintended strikes. So what we're going to look at today is, first and foremost, why ever even bother attacking somebody in armor with an extended sword position? And we're going to look at this because it may not be to strike the person like we think within, an unarmored situation, but it may be, once again, tying back to apprezzare. So Brandon is going to assume the position of Veracrochet because we know in the first play that Fiore says he's assuming he's making a play out of this, and the person's coming out here in this extension of the sword in two hands. Now, from this position right here, it makes no sense really to stab in the spaces right here because she's very well armored. But remember, I can visually see that. And as we look at future plays, that's another factor that comes into why these things may or may not actually happen. If I understand that if I understand for her to be in armor, I might be extending forward here, not to try to stab her face or anything like this right here, because that's a very small caliber shot. I might be using this to extend into the gapping space between the arms right here, trying to put it on top of the gauntlet, maybe getting behind inside the gauntlet in this position, or placing it on so as she rotates, I can shut down and lock in other places, which allow other axes on. So if she is utilizing Veracrochet, just the basic target areas that we're looking at. And the reason I'm using these right here, we'll go to Sharpsons in the next episode, but this right here allows a lot more pry barring, which I think is necessary to understand. From this position, I have the ability to shoot straight across here. As she rotates into me, it gets caught inside, and I have access into grappling on her person. Okay? I also have the other arm right here. You can't really see it, but that's okay, because again, maybe I'm sitting here in posta breve, a sword in two-hand position that is favored in armor. Maybe I'm probing at her, I get her to go, and I shoot into that opening spot, and as she turns, I can jam up the arms of the rest of the body. If we think about it from a armored sword consideration, a mezza porta di ferro consideration, there's another option that I have right here as well, which is to aim right to the back portion of the gauntlet and to stab her into the wrist. So we have a thrust right here, we have a thrust through the arms, we have a thrust between the legs, and of course, if she's wearing a visorless helmet or no helmet at all, as some of the images will depict. Of course, a shot to the face or the shoulders is also possible. Another aspect of what this can be utilized for is I can utilize this right here. I'm using a Colty to strike into the arms, try to constrain her play. So for me right here, by coming over top and placing this onto the arm, I'm trying to stop her arms from causing any type of motion. Now she can turn, but I also have the ability here to protect myself. So making contact with the sword as far as striking into the spine doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to hurt her, but it makes me have avenue of approach. So again, I strike in here. Maybe she tries to shook me off and turns to her left. Well, now I have the same type of access here to the inside, right? I can also, if she tries to go the other way with this, I have the ability to now aim low into attacking to the low portion of the body. So remember, when it comes down to this, when we turn the body of a person, it doesn't necessarily matter, because as I put the point here into the hip, I want to turn her body. If I put this into the shoulder, I'm trying to turn the body. You should just collar point nose allow me to get to the back side of her, which allows for dagger work or other apprezzari. We're going to take a look at that one more time, switching sides here. This way we can kind of see both angles of approach here, or once again, the aspects. Now she's using Vera Croce. This time we're going to be utilizing the bastard cross. And the same side right here. It's the same kind of consideration because, again, if you notice on this, her hand is wide open for a shot. She's got spots underneath right here. The groin is open. If she levels her arm down, maybe she tries to keep it a little bit level. Now I have other areas where I can aim at. The pocket right back here is smaller, so I don't necessarily have a way to go with this. But that doesn't mean that I can't force somebody to turn and to create that space where a thrust to lock them up will happen. So as she assumes the position of croce di bastarde, what a word. I have, once again, I can thrust right there to the hand as a straight shot in. And again, if I keep driving with it, that's going to turn the rest of the body, which is exactly what I'm trying to go for. As soon as I make that point, I push and turn her. I have the ability to strike low with this, which is where the thrust can come into place, into the groin, doubling her down, which allows for me to get access to other sides. I might, from this position, from once again, that mezzo porte ferro, I might strike top on top of this. It's not going to necessarily cut all the way through, but as I walk in, now I can work into the body and start creating grappling situations to the inside of the arm and or the hand. I can also pump fake and get her to try to maybe turn her body slightly and shoot across into the locking mechanisms, which will allow for other plays to happen around. All of this right here, this first video here is just to talk about why does somebody attack with a sword in this position? Well, if we apply what we had before and we look at the armored and the type of swords that were over a period of time, which are a lot more robust, and depending on who was making them, who was carrying them, they're more of a private utility thing because cutting the person may or not be the thing that happens. It goes down to the concept of grappling, which is apprezzari, which takes it all the way back to the beginning of the manuscript.
So as you can see with the video, this first portion we're talking about is that essentially the sword, and many times we think about it only being a way of being able to stick, stab, or cut somebody, where I don't know if that's necessarily all that historically people thought of it as. The image we talked about in this right here is, I've heard people discuss about how it makes no sense to hold a sword in a two-handed grip, as seen in this image at least, against, someone who's using an armored sword. While absolutely the plate and chainmail and padding, like they all have different variant levels. Remember, I put a video out there about the makeup of armor itself. There's a little bit in there that is, quite that's a lot to consider. But that doesn't necessarily mean that what we're facing here is limited to just having to hold the sword as in a shortened piece. So this person that's coming at with the extended sword, there's lots of options they have available to them because of how this thing is held, projected, and allows for them to be able to do things to strike in different areas. Something that I've experienced in some of my ranges, as I've done half sorting into very robust cloth or chainmail or whatever else, My lead hand that's holding the blade, the possibility of it sliding into the broader section of the blade, where the blade is like bigger into the hand, is a possibility. And while I have at some points, suffered minor cuts into the hand, that gave me some considerations when you start talking about someone that's really trying to drive the point into the person. And that why holding onto the handle of the sword might be a viable option right here. I'm not trying to strike the person like I might, like I do in an unarmored context, but I do have still plays available to me because of that extension and what it offers me in different spaces. So that's going to conclude the video here. Again, this isn't a very long, drawn out video here because, again, for the most part, when we look at this play, as we're going to talk about, in the following weeks, a lot of times I've heard people, when it comes down to either this play or other plays within, Fiore's manuscripts, well, the person that Fiore is defeating or that the play is defeating, they might not know what they're dealing with. And, while there's absolutely wisdom in that, I do think that in many cases you can face off with someone that does not know what they're doing, and that'd be a greater danger than someone that understands a process. And that's a theme that we see within, globally with martial arts. But regardless of that, I don't think that that's necessarily the case, especially when you see depictions of him holding the sword in one hand, in two hands, an extension against armor, and how that plays in different roles. So this right here is not, I don't think, simulating against someone who doesn't know what they're doing. It's an algorithmic process. So we're talking about at the crossing of somebody extending a blow forward with a two-handed grip as far as extension. Now how we utilize the half sword against that to contend against that. And that everything else we would see before within the sword and two-hand section still applies. So with that being the case here, everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Please don't forget, like, subscribe, share with a friend. And as always, until I see you out there, please be safe out there, train well, and fight on. I'll see you all soon.